Everyone says if you put 20% down to buy a home, then you're all set. But how much home can you really afford? Are you using the right formula to figure out your budget, or just setting yourself up for disappointment? In today's video, I'm going to walk you through what it looks like to buy a home with 20% down if you make $100,000 of income, if you make $200,000 of income, and if you make $300,000 of income. In addition to that, we're going to take a look at 3 different methods. We're going to take a look at how Dave Ramsey approaches it. We're going to look at the 28/36 method. And then finally, we're going to look at the max that conventional financing allows to show you exactly how much home you can afford with 20% down. Now, before we dive into that, I think it's really important to understand that you don't have to have 20% down in order to buy a home. There's this myth out there that you have to have 20% down to buy a home. The reality is you can buy a home with as little as 3% down. But the reason that 20% down is talked about so much is because that's what our parents did. That's what our grandparents did. That's the only thing they know. And because home prices have gotten so expensive in many places across the US, saving 20% down is very difficult. So please understand, if you don't have 20% down, the road doesn't end here. There are other options out there for you, and you can actually use today's formula in order to help you calculate your exact down payment. So why does 20% actually matter? Why is 20% the magic number? Well, putting 20% down allows you to avoid mortgage insurance. Mortgage insurance is an unnecessary insurance that's often put on by the lender in order to insure themselves against default. So when you put less than 20% down, you're actually seen as a higher risk candidate. Therefore, the lender requires you to pay a monthly insurance premium in order to insure your loan in case you end up not making your payments. But once you have 20% down, you're no longer seen as this high risk, which often means you're also getting the best loan terms out there. You're getting the best mortgage rate out. But there's something really important to understand. Putting 20% down doesn't automatically qualify you for unlimited buying power. It's still tied to your income, to your debts, as well as other factors like your credit score. And that's exactly where I want to start today's video, right after you hit that thumbs up if you find any value in my content at all. And if you want to stay updated on everything real estate and mortgage related, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. So how does a lender determine how much home you can actually afford? Well, the easy answer is they analyze your debts and your income, which is often referred to as your debt to income ratio. And based on that ratio and their guidelines, they're going to tell you whether or not you're approved to buy a home at a certain purchase price. In today's video, we're actually going to be talking about 3 different debt to income ratios. When we're talking about Dave Ramsey's method, we're going to be using 25% of our take-home pay on a 15-year fixed mortgage. Then we're going to use the 28/36 method, which essentially means you can have 28% of your gross monthly income going toward your housing expenses. And then lastly, we're going to look at conventional financing's max debt to income ratio, which is 49%. So depending on how conservative or aggressive you are, it will dictate exactly how much home you can purchase. Now, just for clarification, your debt to income ratio is your debts divided by your gross monthly income in most cases. Now, I say in most cases because Dave Ramsey actually wants you to use your take-home pay after taxes have come out. But understand, when a lender qualifies you, put Dave Ramsey aside, they're going to use your gross monthly income. That's before any taxes come out. And the reason they use this method is because people have different write-offs. They have different exemptions. They have money going towards a 401k. They have money going different places. So in order to keep things equal and keep the calculation simple, they're going to use your gross monthly income before taxes come out. Now, when I say that, I'm primarily talking about wage earners, those working for someone else. When you're a 1099 employee or you're self-employed, you work for yourself, the calculations are the same, but they're going to be analyzing your tax returns, not your W-2s. So if you're at home trying to do these calculations on your own, what I would recommend is speaking with a mortgage professional. Don't try to do back of the napkin calculations and run with them. Talk to a mortgage professional, have them look at your credit, have them look at your tax returns, your pay stubs, and tell you exactly how much home you can afford. Now, if you don't know where to start, my team and I have helped hundreds of people here on YouTube. There's a link in the description where you can get in touch with us and we can help guide you through that process. But taking a step back, what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at $100,000 of income, $200,000 of income, and $300,000 of income based on the 3 different methods that we talked about earlier. So in today's video, when we're talking about $100,000 of income, and we're using the gross monthly income, that's $8,333 a month, because we take the 100,000, we divide it by 12, and that gives us that number. But in the case of Dave Ramsey's method, we have to do one additional step, which is we factor in about 20% towards taxes before we actually calculate our ratio. Now, I'll talk about that here in just a minute, but in the case that we're talking about $100,000 of income and we're using Dave Ramsey's method, what we're going to do is we're going to take the $100,000, we're going to divide it by 12, that's $8,333 a month. Now, we're going to take 80% of that because we're going to assume you have about 20% in taxes, which means we're going to be working with a number of $6,666. Well, Dave Ramsey doesn't want you to use more than 25% of that towards your housing expenses. Now, that's going to include your principal and interest, so your mortgage payment, your property taxes, and your homeowner's insurance, along with any HOAs on that property. What it's not going to include is your light bill, your electric bill, your gas bill, any of that stuff. But here's the real catch. He only wants you using a 15-year fixed mortgage, which means the payment is going to be a lot higher, and you're ultimately going to qualify for a lot less home using this method. So what we're going to do is take that $6,666, take 25% of that, which in this case is $1,667. So Dave Ramsey doesn't want us spending more than $1,667 towards our housing expenses if we make $100,000 per year. So the question is, how much home can you afford if you put 20% down and try to keep your budget under that number? Well, the reality is it's going to put you at a purchase price somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000. So in the case that we're buying a $250,000 home, that means 20% down is $50,000, which means we're financing $200,000. Well, interest rates today on a 15-year fixed are sitting around 6%, which means our mortgage payment is going to be $1,199 per month. On top of that, we're going to have property taxes. I'm using the nationwide average, which is 1.1%. Now, depending on where you're located in the country, that number might be higher, it might be lower. Chances are it's going to be higher, especially if you're in a state like Texas, Florida, New York. Property taxes in those states can sometimes be over 2%. So just make sure you're using the calculation for the state that you're located in. But in the case of 1.1%, that means our property taxes are going to be $229 per month. In addition to that, we're going to have homeowner's insurance. Now, homeowner's insurance is one of those things, again, that varies by region and the calculation varies. But the calculation I'm using is 0.0035. And you take that number, you divide it by 12, which gives us $73 a month for homeowner's insurance. So in the case that you're buying a $250,000 home on a 15-year fixed, your mortgage payment is going to be $1,501 per month. Now, earlier we said it had to be under $1,667, which gives us a little room to go higher. But if we use that same formula for a $300,000 home, that mortgage payment's $1,801. So the reality is you're probably going to be maxed out at somewhere around $275,000. Now, you're probably watching this going, where can I buy a home for $250,000? And I don't even want a 15-year fixed, and I want a 30-year fixed mortgage. Well, you're not alone. The reality is most people think that Dave Ramsey is way too conservative. And the reason he is because he's essentially trying to protect people from themselves. But if you're one of those people that can budget, that can put money away, and can actually save money on the side, then chances are you can actually go to a little higher debt to income ratio. So let's take a look at the 28/36 method. So in this case, they're allowing you to use 28% of your gross monthly income towards your housing expenses. So in the case that we make $100,000, again, that breaks down to $8,333 a month. Well, if we use 28% of that, that means our housing expenses can go up as high as $2,333. And in addition to that, we can have around $666 in other debts like credit cards, car payments, student loans, that sort of thing, and still keep our ratios under this 28/36. So in the case that we're looking to push our budget a little bit higher and use the 28/36 method, we're going to be somewhere around a purchase price of $350,000. And that's because $350,000 with 20% down, that means you're financing $280,000. Now, the interest rate's going to be higher because now you're doing a 30-year fixed mortgage. You're no longer doing a 15-year fix. So interest rates today are going to be somewhere around 6.75%, which means your mortgage payment's going to break down to $1,816 per month. We're using the same calculation for your property taxes, which are going to come out to $321 a month. And lastly, you're going to have homeowner's insurance at $102 a month, giving you a total monthly mortgage payment of $2,239. So again, if you've been paying attention, this allows you to buy about $100,000 more home by going to the 28/36 method versus that of Dave Ramsey. But what does it look like if we push the ratios all the way as high as conventional financing would allow at 49%? Well, it's really important to understand that not everyone can get this approved. You have to have very strong credit scores. You have to have money in the bank outside of the down payment, outside of your closing costs. So you need compensating factors when you're really trying to push these ratios. But with that said, if we were allowed to push those ratios to 49%, that means our mortgage payment could not exceed $4,083 per month, which in the case of conventional financing on a 30-year fixed term is going to put you somewhere between a $600,000 and $700,000 purchase price. Because if you buy a $600,000 purchase price and you put 20% down, that means you're putting $120,000 down. You're actually financing $480,000. Now, interest rate's going to be the same based on today's 6.75%, which gives you a mortgage payment of $3,113 per month. Our property taxes are going to be $550. Our homeowner's insurance is going to be $175, which is probably a little bit high, but that gives you a total monthly mortgage payment of $3,838, which also gives you about $200 of monthly debt towards credit cards, towards student loans, towards car payments, towards that sort of thing. Now, if you have more than $200,000 of debt, you're not going to be able to qualify for that home. You're going to have to go down in purchase price because the max debt to income ratio on the front and back end is 49%. So now that we understand salary, we understand the different methods of calculation, let's take a look at a $200,000 salary. That actually breaks down to $16,667 a month if we're using the gross monthly income. But remember, if we're using Dave Ramsey's method, before we max out our ratios at 25%, we need to take taxes into account. So we need to multiply that by 0.8 because again, we're factoring in 20% for taxes, which means instead of using $16,667, we're using $13,333. Now again, his ratios don't allow you to go to more than 25% of that towards your housing expenses on a 15-year fix, which means we're actually going to be maxed out at $3,333, which is going to put us at a purchase price somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000, probably close to $450,000. Because if we look at a $400,000 purchase price, that's going to give us a total monthly mortgage payment of $2,402 a month, whereas the $500,000 purchase price gives us a mortgage payment of $3,512 a month. So if we wanted to keep it exactly at 25%, then we're probably going to be maxed out at $450,000. But again, many of you are thinking that's way too conservative, so let's take a look at the 28/36 method, which allows us to use $4,667 towards our housing expenses and still have around $1,333 to use towards monthly debts like car payments, credit cards, and student loans. So in the case that we're doing this 28/36, we're going to be maxed out at a purchase price somewhere just over $700,000. Because again, if we're buying a $700,000 home, that's a $140,000 down payment, which means we're financing $560,000 at an interest rate today of 6.75%, giving us a total monthly mortgage payment of $3,632 per month. Our property taxes are going to be $642. Our homeowner's insurance has it estimated at $204, probably a little bit high, but again, I think it's better to estimate high than low and be surprised. So in this case, buying that $700,000 home is going to give you a mortgage payment of $4,478 a month, which gives us close to $1,500 that we can spend on other monthly debts for our back-end ratio. But what does it look like if we can use conventional financing and max out at 49%? Well, that means we can use $8,167 towards our housing expenses, which means we can buy a home just over $1.2 million. Because at $1.2 million, if you're putting 20% down, that's $240,000, which means you're financing $960,000. If your interest rate is 6.75%, your monthly mortgage payment would be $6,227 per month. Your property taxes would be $1,100 per month, and it has your homeowner's insurance again estimated at $350 a month. Again, I believe that's probably about $150 to $200 high, but that would give us a total monthly mortgage payment of $7,677, which means if we were absolutely trying to push the budget, then we could probably go over 1.2 just slightly. But by staying at 1.2, it gives you about $500 that you could use towards other debts like credit cards, car payments, student loans, that sort of thing, and still keep your ratios in line. So now let's take a look at $300,000. How much home can you afford at $300,000 if you put 20% down using Dave Ramsey's method? So now the first thing we have to do is take $300,000. We have to divide it by 12, which gives us $25,000 a month. Now remember, Dave Ramsey wants after taxes, which means we need to take 80% of that, which is $20,000. Now he only wants us to use 25% of the take-home pay, which again is going to be $5,000 per month, and we have to do it on a 15-year fixed mortgage. So in the case that we were trying to stick to Dave Ramsey's method, we're going to be maxed out at a purchase price somewhere around $800,000, because with 20% down, we're going to be financing $640,000. Now remember, interest rates are a little bit better because it's a 15-year fix, so at 6%, that mortgage payment is going to be $3,837 per month. The property taxes are going to be $733 a month, and it also has homeowners insurance at $233 a month. Again, I expect it to probably be around $150 based on this purchase price, but we're going to use the same number here at $233, which means our total monthly mortgage payment is $4,804. So that's Dave Ramsey's max. But what if we wanted to push it? What if we still think Dave Ramsey is too conservative and we want to do the 28/36 method? Well, in that case, we can use $7,000 towards our housing expense. And again, we can do it on a 30-year fixed mortgage, which means we can buy a home somewhere around $1.1 million. That would give us a payment of $7,037 a month, while still having around $2,000 to go towards other monthly debts like car payments, credit cards, student loans. Because again, our housing expenses is our front end ratio, but our back end ratio is our housing expenses plus those other debts. So what if that doesn't allow you to purchase as much home as you wanted to and you want to push those ratios? Well, if we're using conventional financing again at 49%, that's going to put you somewhere around a $2 million purchase price, assuming you can get 49% back-end ratios approved, because you're getting out of high balance conforming loan limits. You're now in jumbo territory, but either way, that puts the mortgage payment at a $2 million purchase price at $12,794, where your ratios needed to stay at $12,250. So it's a little bit higher than you can actually go. You'd probably have to come down under $2 million or put a little bit more money down in order to actually make those numbers work. But the thing I want to stress is don't take these numbers and run with them. Interest rates change every single day. Qualifying your income can sometimes be a little bit more complicated than what I'm actually talking about in today's video. So make sure you're talking to a mortgage professional, somebody that can walk you through the process. My team and I can help you. There's a link in the description. So if you have questions or you're ready to start the process, make sure you reach out. Now, if you're watching this and these numbers are too far outside of your budget and you're wondering what you can purchase with less money down, do me a favor and check out this video here.